Instead, I'm going to go and get fucking mad and some other shit. Okay, one, we'll look at the CNN confronting woman behind the bogus Arizona election audit. But I want to talk about the four House Democrats making clear their displeasure with some progressives over Israel rhetoric. Now, in recent days, you saw, like with Mark Ruffalo, who is otherwise a very, like a very kind, very empathetic, and very good person overall, who talks about like Palestinian liberation on very clear terms, among numerous other causes that he openly advocates for, who's very brave. Mark Ruffalo also came out and said that, you know, what Israel's doing against Hamas is not genocide. And he called it the Israel-Hamas like conflict. Now, that I have seen is the ongoing rhetoric, right? Okay. What happened is we're going back to the old school, like, you know, criticisms of Israel create anti-Semitism, and therefore criticisms of Israel is anti-Semitic. It's like the same, it's like in the same vein, basically. It's the same type of fucking propaganda talking points that people are comfortable throwing out. So now it's like, you know, the PR teams are working and they're fucking, and you know, the PR machine is in full speed. Mark Ruffalo's statement was bad. I criticized it. You guys remember I said, you know, you should tell the families of the 200 plus murdered Palestinians. You should tell that to the 200 plus families of the 200 plus murdered Palestinians in Gaza that they were declared enemy combatants, that, you know, Israel wasn't doing ethnic cleansing, right? And what I find to be particularly interesting in the language here is that this is a PR line. This is not a Mark Ruffalo line, because most people that understand and acknowledge the existence and the humanity of Palestinians won't fucking say this is Israel-Hamas fighting, okay? That's a very important distinction. Now, the reason why that's an important distinction, even before, like, he apologized for calling it genocide, that is the key part here that's doing a lot of the work. Motherfuckers love portraying this as conflict between Israel and Hamas. But it's not Hamas that's dying, it's Palestinians that's dying, okay? There's a couple different things that people do in mainstream media without letting you in on or cueing you in on what they're actually saying. Changing this from an apartheid or a colonizing apartheid settler colonial state to, oh, Israel's right to existence. Changing the conversation from like Israel murdering Gaza Palestinians in the world's largest open air prison to, oh, this is conflict between Israel and Hamas, as though they're like equal forces, as though they have like, you know, similar goals or whatever the fuck. These are little ways in which you slowly but surely materialize your perspective and your clearly one-sided point of view. It's a false equivocation. It's a false equivalency. And it's also a lie. It does not represent what is going on the ground. So now, take it one step further, and there are people saying it's actually fucked up to say Israel is being an apartheid state or committing acts of terrorism. These statements are anti-Semitic to its core. And by the way, like, if you look at some of the ADL reports, ADL, which also considers like a lot of a broader scope of like of criticisms of Israel to be anti-Semitic in nature. If you look at ADL reports, which get featured regularly in the news media right now about like anti-Semitic attacks increasing, which they absolutely fucking have, and it's disgusting. They will feature shit like people got caught saying Israel is behaving like Nazis, like things that I literally say on this broadcast. Like the comparison of Israel, the Israeli government, to Nazis is considered anti-Semitic, and they include that in the anti-Semitic hate crimes. Like, that's fucking nuts. Okay, so that shit is it's fucking unacceptable. Okay. ADL reported a Jewish couple trolling a Palestine event as an anti-Semitic attack. Yeah, I know. I'm going to talk about that in a second. The problem is people try to rebut with Hamas and Palestine because Palestine voted in Hamas. It's idiotic, but that's their default rebuttal now. Yeah. But that doesn't matter, okay? You can't fucking say that like 9/11 was a justifiable attack on U.S. soil because Americans fucking voted for you know, the death and destruction that befall on civilians in that regard were justifiable because Americans fucking voted for more imperialism. Like, my sentiment was not justifying the deaths of civilians with that regard. Don't say all of a sudden, motherfucker, You know what I mean. It is an expected retaliation, is what I meant. An expected retaliation from people that we fucking trained. So, to consider what Israel is doing to not be an apartheid state is to deny reality. And if I'm being honest, like, I'm sorry, this does not help Israel. Like, this literally does not help Israel. Like, for people who are paying attention to what's going on, and there are a lot of you in here right now that never knew what the fuck was going on beforehand, and now you're paying attention to this, when you hear this, you're like, well, this is so stupid. Like, that's insane. Like, anyone who has learned about what the fuck has been going on in historic Palestine with respect to what Israel has done to Palestinian people for the past week, or even like briefly looked at it, recognizes that, like, no, this is literally an apartheid state. It falls within the guidelines of an apartheid state perfectly, okay? And it is. It straight up is. So considering that to be like anti-Semitic devalues actual anti-Semitism. You are devaluing legitimate instances of anti-Semitism by comparing it to actual reality, okay? Like actually real things, which is the Israeli apartheid state. That is a real thing, okay? God damn, dude. Anyway, in many ways, what Israel has been doing is worse than apartheid South Africa. Oh, I forgot to run a fucking ad at the top of the hour. I'm gonna do it right now. We'll talk about this in a second. Hold on. But here's the 1 minute ad now. Where did you get your... Yeah, it's not a good transition, I know.
444.
I know I didn't start right at 2. Okay. We're deeply disturbed by the recent surge of anti-Semitic incidents in the United States. Understandable. Okay. We appreciate your administration's commitment to combat anti-Semitism in all forms by continuing to work with us to address this scourge. We also know that the issue is deeply important for you and your family. We believe that we need a united all-government effort to combat rising anti-Semitism in the country. As you know, over the past few weeks, we witnessed a surge in anti-Semitic incidents, saying who's Jewish before unleashing a violent attack on dinners while yelling anti-Semitic slurs. In Bal Harbor, Jewish family visiting in New Jersey was harassed by four men in an SUV. Free Palestine, fuck you. In Tucson, Arizona, individual threw a rock through a glass window, vandalizing congregation Shabbarim. It is undeniable that this increase in anti-Semitic incidents has coincided with the recent conflicts in the Middle East. It must be made clear that there's simply no excuse whatsoever for harassing or targeting people because they're Jewish. Yeah, no shit. That all the way up to this point, yeah, it's it is true. Let's see where it goes from here. Blaming Jews for conflict in the Middle East or seeking to hold them collectively responsible for Israel's government policies is anti-Semitic, and it is wrong. Given that Jews in Europe and all around the world have faced a similar increase in threats in recent weeks coinciding with the conflict, we also urge you to swiftly nominate an experienced and qualified United States ambassador at large to monitor and combat anti-Semitism. Growing anti-Semitic incidents are being fueled from a variety of sources, including a torrent of anti-Semitic posts online.
6-month hassle.
Okay. For instance, the Anti-Defamation League found more than 17,000 tweets in 1 week from the phrase Hitler was right. At the same time, okay, this blows my fucking mind because, like, literally up to this point, up to this point, it's like a perfectly valid statement to bring out. Okay.
HasanAbi 6 months.
It's perfectly valid. I mean, it's not all from America. That's crazy. And it's like literally Nazis and shit that are saying this stuff. But at the same, and it's completely disconnected, or should be completely disconnected from Palestinian liberation in general. Okay. What is this? What? Weird how not a single one of these articles ever mentions a rise in Islamophobia. It doesn't matter. But now we're getting to a point where it's going to be really fucked up. There's such a strong Nazi presence here. It's such a fucking stain on the community. What do you mean? Are there people that are being like, are there Nazis in here right now? It could be. I've been getting a lot more attention recently from the remaining Nazis on the internet. No. I know for a fact, maybe not like outwardly in the community right now, but yeah, just clap them always straight up. In Arizona? Oh, okay. There really are people who are coming out of the woodwork. I get in moral arguments about this all the time. You can end up running in circles with someone who disagrees with you, but if you know the history and look at the conflict now, yeah. Anyway, we also reject comments. Oh, so at the same time, elected public officials have used reckless, irresponsible anti-Semitic rhetoric. These include repeated, unacceptable, and blatantly anti-Semitic statements made by a member of Congress comparing face masks and other COVID-19 public health measures to what happened in Nazi Germany during the Holocaust. Right. Still right. I mean, we've gone through 1 page of right. Let's see where the wrong is, because it's going to be so wrong. We also reject comments from members of Congress accusing Israel of being an apartheid state and committing acts of terrorism. The statements are anti-Semitic at their core and contribute to a climate that is hostile to many Jews. We must never forget that less than 80 years ago, within the lifetime of our parents, and then we talk about the Holocaust by Nazis, Israel has long provided the Jewish people with a homeland which they can be safe after facing centuries of persecution. So this notion that, like, the Israeli state, which is a settler colonial apartheid state currently engaging in ethnic cleansing that they openly fucking mentioned. Saying that as it is the same as like comparing the Holocaust to fucking mask wearing as though the Holocaust was just about like, you know, inconveniencing Jewish people is insane. That is not as insane as comparing the Holocaust to mask wearing, but like literally bringing this up right after that and saying both are anti-Semitic is psychotic. The irony here is that like conservatives do this all the time. Reactionaries do this all the time. They create a narrative of victimhood and then they justify their actions through that narrative of victimhood regularly. The marginalization there, however, by educated parties is immediately recognized as bullshit. For example, we need a straight pride parade, or we need white lives matter movements because black lives matter movements are gaining traction. Like these sorts of things are immediately recognized as like a false victimhood narrative that you have cultivated for yourself. Okay. But the difference here between like a historically dominant group trying to perceive victimhood or trying to generate an era of victimhood versus Jewish people doing that is that Jewish people have been marginalized historically and are still to this day in the Western world through anti-Semitism. So that is real. So in a way, it's even more nefarious to take something that is a real problem and to use that as a fucking shield. A way to deflect away, okay? 4 persons on the Democratic Party wrote this. Our parents, our grandparents, 6 million people were murdered by the Nazis. Sadly, we have learned from our history that when this type of violence and inflammatory rhetoric goes unaddressed, it can fuel increasing hatred and violence and lead to unspeakable acts against Jews. This is why we need a united bipartisan national level of commitment to confront and address the threat of anti-Semitism head on. Anti-Semitism is wrong and it deserves to be unequivocally condemned by all. Yes, but these people also unequivocally condemn anti-Semitism. For example, where the fuck is Ilhan Omar's tweet? Ilhan Omar says, the rise in anti-Semitic attacks at home and abroad is appalling. We must be clear and unequivocal. Anti-Semitism is unacceptable and has no place in any movement. Fighting bigotry with any kind of any kind means fighting bigotry of every kind. And it also means that we cannot equate legitimate criticisms of the Israeli government, its policy, and its military occupation with anti-Semitism. Connecting the actions of a foreign country's government with military, foreign government and military with the entire faith does nothing to keep Jewish people safer. Straight up. Great take by Ilhan Omar. Once again. Okay? We'll look at Marco Rubio being a fucking idiot in a second, okay? But I just wanted to say that, like, this shit is really, really frustrating to see. And also counterproductive, ultimately, because it comes across to most normal people that are just, like, not really paying attention to this, but, or at least have seen, like, some coverage of it that is at least a little bit not biased, to be like, well, what the fuck? It seems like you're just bringing this up right now to use it as a deflection. And it kind of is. You are doing that. You're tying the actions of Israel as an apartheid colonial settler state and its unjustifiable and incredibly cruel actions towards Palestinians to the international Jewish community, while in the same sentence, you're literally saying it should not be. But they're not saying that Israel's actions are violent or apartheid, of course. So, I don't know, man. Lie about your religion to be safe? Is that what Biden's America is coming? America's public enemy #1 crime, thanks to Democrats, murder, violence, lawlessness, and anti-Semitism are spreading across the country? What the fuck is this dude saying, bro? Yo, we really do have a bunch of fucking freak hogs in here as of late. I'm gonna keep that one. That's definitely a fucking dumbass boomer. I'm gonna keep that one though. This letter is just straight up calling Ilhan Omar and them. All right, what is this? I want to see this. Let's do some bravophobia, something that everyone can agree on. You know, a little bit of bravophobia, bruv.